Welcome and thank you for joining today's Mushroom Council webinar. I'm Christy Mather with FLM Harvest, the Mushroom Council's marketing communications agency. Today we are joined by Mark Lang, PhD, the Mushroom Council's marketing strategy advisor. Dr. Lang is a professor of marketing at the University of Tampa, and before academia, he was director of marketing and research at Publix supermarkets for over 10 years. Today, Dr. Lang is going to share the results of hot off the press consumer research that he led this spring that reveals what consumers are thinking, feeling, and doing about mushrooms, the blend, plant-based alternative meats, mushroom labeling, immunity, and more. Please use the Q&A feature here on Zoom to pose questions. We'll have a Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. And with that, I'm pleased to welcome Dr. Mark Lang.
Thank you, Christy, and hello, everybody. And thank you for taking time out of your busy days to spend some time with us to learn about findings that we have from research that we've done recently. I'd like to share research learnings in 3 areas today, and they're from a large national survey that we just completed. The first thing I'd like to talk about is how the blend is doing in the marketplace. Second thing is attitudes towards mushrooms coming out of COVID. And the third thing is the impact that labels can have on shoppers. But before I get started, just a little background on research at the Mushroom Council. We perform 2 types of research regularly at the council. Every few years, we do a large scale attitudes and behavior study. And then in between the big studies, we do small studies that are tracking surveys. So we also do studies for the blend because it plays such an important role in our marketing. And we do studies on general mushrooms. And we do those on an alternating schedule. This spring, we repeated our large-scale study on attitudes and behaviors for the blend, and that's what we're going to look at today. But in that study, we also added several questions of the moment that are things on the minds of us and you as we try and market and sell mushrooms, things like vitamin D, labeling, and nutrition. So I'll be speaking to that as well. We did the original blend study in 2016, when we really just started ramping up our marketing and advertising around the blend. And then we did a tracking study in 2018, and we used that to assess our progress and set goals going forward. So here we are in 2021, and we've fielded the blend study again, and we fielded it across the United States in March, and we had a sample of just under 2,000 adults. That closely resembles the US Census population and geographic distribution around the country. Participants for the survey were drawn from an established consumer panel, and they were sent a link to a 12-minute online survey. Rather than sharing findings with you today in highly summarized PowerPoint slides, I thought I'd share with you the report that we use inside the council to summarize and use research when we make decisions and do assessments. And the survey that I'm going to show, the results I'm going to show you are available now on the Mushroom Council website where you obtain your other information from the council. So here we have on the screen, this would be the cover page of the survey results that you would go and click on the council page. So it has some background, which I just kind of shared with you. So let's jump into my first topic. You can see here up at the top, it says blend awareness and trial. So you can also see the numbers show results.
Mark, I don't see your screen sharing.
Okay.
If someone in the chat could say whether they can see that, just so it might, I know it's whether it's me. Oh, there it is. Looks like it's coming up.
Okay, good. All right, thank you. So as you can see, I'm going to go back to the beginning. Here's the cover page of the study that you might pull from the website. So that's what it looks like there. So I'm going to go right to findings, starting with the blends. Remember, one of the 3 things I wanted to share with you was how's the blend doing in the marketplace. So you can see here we have results from 2016, 18, and 21. And one of the most important things that we're tracking right now with the blend is awareness. Are people in the population becoming aware of the blend as we advertise and promote it and work with you and with retailers? And the first finding we have is that currently, as of March, 42% of the population has seen or heard of the blend in the marketplace. And that's significantly up from previous periods. So that's a good result right there. When we're asking them about knowing and seeing the blend in the marketplace, we also ask them, where did you hear about it? And we give them an option to choose from many different areas. And we could see here where the most prominent areas where they're hearing the blend, hearing and seeing the blend. So we could see it's in restaurants, it's in food stores, it's in social media. And that's interesting. And the growth in social media is interesting here because we started marketing the blend largely in restaurants in that sector. Then we started to shift our work towards awareness in food stores and supermarkets. And in the most recent years, we've really tried to ramp up our social media presence. So when we see people hearing and seeing of the blend in these areas where we're putting a lot of effort, that's good news for us and that's good feedback. And it kind of tells us what we should do going forward. We also asked them, how recently have you heard of the blend? Because there's a chance in the marketplace that someone has heard of blending mushrooms with meat because of their grandmother's recipe that they learned about 10 years ago or longer. So we asked them, how recently have you heard of the blend? And we're looking for people who've seen or heard of the blend in a recent period that's less than a year. That would be like our last marketing year. So we've consistently seen over time that if you look at the column on the right here, 50% or more of the people that say they've heard of the blend have heard of it in the last year. So that's telling us, it's reporting back to us that the advertising and promotion that we're doing to create awareness is working and it's bringing in new people and introducing new people to the blend. The next most important thing we want to know about the blend is, yeah, okay, people are hearing about it, but how many people are trying it? So awareness and trial are actually our two most important measures for blend success. And this question number 9 here asks people which of these applies to them. And they're kind of different levels of having not tried the blend or having tried it and trying it and consuming it multiple times. So if I add up the bottom 4 of these are all the people who've tried the blend in some way. And it turns out that 66% of people who are aware of the blend have tried the blend. So that's also a pretty strong number as far as we're concerned. If we do the math on that, 42% of the people of the population aware of the blend and 66% of them trying the blend, the math of that is that about 27% of Americans have tried the blend. Now, we could ask, is that a good number? Is that enough? Is that a good result? Well, when we started marketing the blend back in 2014, we set goals for where we wanted to be each year over the next 10 years, 10 or 12 years. And we're thinking about the blend from kind of a marketing strategy perspective of any product that is introduced to the marketplace goes through something called the product life curve. It passes from development, introduction to the market, a growth phase where there's increasing growth, a growth phase where there's decreasing growth, and then decline. This normally takes 10 to 15 years for food products in the United States. So we set a time frame starting back in 2014 of 12 years to take us to 2025. And using normal penetration numbers in the population, in this row here, if you could see my little hand, this is where we're pacing, where we thought we should be each year going forward. So here we are at the end of 2020. And back in 2014, we said we should be around 27% trial penetration of the population. And lo and behold, looking at our survey from March, that's exactly where we are. So we're happy to see that we're on track with our goals in terms of getting people in the US to try the blend. Something interesting from a marketing perspective is happening here too. In the early stages of product launches, call it the introduction, the type of shopper that you're normally speaking to they're called innovators and early adopters, and they make up 15% of the population. So that's a very low part of the growth curve. But when you switch to the growth phase, you start to penetrate the mainstream population. And in a marketing textbook, they're called the early and the late majority, and they make up 68% of the population. So when you start to penetrate that group, you start to see rapid growth in the marketplace. And here we are in 2020 and 21, we're entering or penetrating the early majority of the population. And you could see that numbers start to rise pretty quickly as we try and go up this curve in the marketplace in terms of sales growth and population penetration. I share this extra detail with you because it gives you a little bit of insight into how the marketing team inside the Mushroom Council thinks about marketing now and into the future, and how we set strategies and goals and KPIs to measure our growth. And the research results I'm sharing with you aren't just for learning purposes, they're part of tracking and assessing investments in marketing spending and marketing activities. That's a little bit of little marketing 101 background on kind of what we're working on. So when we're talking about the blend and people's experience with it, we also ask them, where did you try the blend? And we've been surprised from the very beginning that many people try the blend in their own home or in a friend or family member's home. Personally, I think this must be cookouts and barbecues and events with families and friends where they're making burgers and they're making them with the blend and they're sharing them. But you can also see that people have tried the blend at food stores and other food service venues, kind of like following from where we're trying to be sampling and promoting these things. We also ask a timing question about trial, this idea of how recently have you tried the blend? Is this your grandmother's recipe from 15 years ago, or is it blend marketing that we did in the last year? And again, we see strong numbers, well over 50%, over 60% of people have tried the blend for the first time within the last year. So that means that they're trying the blend that we're talking about, and they're trying it as a result of advertising and promotion that we're putting out in the marketplace. So again, good feedback for us in that the things that we're doing in the marketplace are driving awareness and trial, are two most important things to measure. So after we figure out, are people seeing it and are people trying it, we have other questions like, how often do people have it? So we ask people, do you consume a blended type product weekly, monthly, yearly, less than yearly, or not at all? And we see that people that are regular blend consumers, 48% of them consume it weekly and 36% of them consume it monthly. Now, as a marketer, these numbers seem a little high to me, which can happen on consumer surveys. So I, as a rule of thumb, will cut numbers in half and see if I'm still happy with them. So if I cut 48% in half and call it 25% of blend consumers consuming weekly, still a great number. So even if the number is a little bit high, it's still a good indication that when people adopt the blend as a product in their household, they kind of stay with it, which is good news, because the only reason we're talking about blend consumption is because we're trying to drive fresh mushroom consumption. So if people regularly consume the blend, they're regularly consuming mushrooms, and that's what we're really interested in. We kind of ask a question here as well. How much of your blend consumption is at home? Because you saw the earlier list had home, food service, food stores, it had 20 different places. And we find that 76% of regular blend consumption is done in the home. That's a really good finding, because that means people are buying mushrooms in a supermarket and coming home and preparing them in the blend in home. So that's a good number in terms of what drives our business, right? And what drives your business. We also ask people, in what form, in what format do you consume the blend? So we gave them a list of things to choose from, and we said, what are the two most common ways that you prepare the blend when you make it at home? And they could be making it at home with fresh mushrooms, or pre-chopped packaged mushrooms, like a value-added product, or frozen or pre-formed in a deli, or pre-cooked in a food store, or in a restaurant, or with a pre-made frozen burger. And we can look at here how people are consuming the blend. And here's a reinforcement of an earlier idea here. The majority way is with fresh mushrooms, either fresh or chopped, in home, making it kind of from scratch. They make it in other ways. and pre-made frozen burger patties. We put it on the survey for the first time, and that's 1 in 7, so that's material. But the main ways are still making it at home with what looks like fresh mushrooms. So another good sign in terms of how blend consumption is affecting fresh mushroom consumption. There is a definite link. We also ask them, because we often get the question, why is there so much focus on burgers? Whenever you guys are marketing the blend, it always seems to be a focus on the burger and the Better Burger Project and burger contests and recipes. It's because since the very beginning, people, when they're given different options in terms of how they would prepare the blend, this list on the left, burgers is not only the #1 way, it is 2 or 3 times greater than the next one on the list, which is meatloaf in this case. So far and away, burgers are the way that people try and they use the blend. So that's why you see it in our images and our messages and our contests, and our consumer engagement still focuses on the burger, because you could say that the burger is the gateway to the blend still in the consumer population. Now, it's used in lots of other ways. You can see these numbers here, and we added meatballs this year to try and get there's a decent amount of meatballs happening, and this is all good, but burgers are still the focus area. And that's reaffirms for us in our marketing that we shouldn't stop featuring the burger. We also asked questions. These are getting into some marketing thinking, but we try and understand, how are people assessing, or how are they responding to the concept of the blend? So we ask them, how well do you understand it? How do you evaluate it favorably? Do you believe what we say about it? Are you interested in knowing more about it? Do you intend to have it in the future? And so we could see these numbers here where, for example, 53% of the population feel like they really understand it. And then 1/3 of the population evaluate it favorably and intend to try it, which kind of matches with our 27% earlier in terms of people who have tried it. But as a marketer, I would say we should be setting goals to increase these numbers though. Why aren't these numbers at 50%? What can we do with advertising and promotion and engagement to keep increasing these numbers? And that's exactly what we talk about inside the Mushroom Council on the marketing team in terms of 2022. As we're looking at our plans for next year already, we ask ourselves, what can we do to drive these numbers? Because we know they'll drive trial and usage, and that drives fresh mushrooms. So that's the kind of the math as we look at it. We also ask them, how much do they believe that a blended product, blending mushrooms with ground meat, would taste better, be healthier, be more environmentally sustainable, cost less, and be new and interesting? And we get results for that here as well. And it looks like the strongest result here is that it would be healthier. That's how they believe that. And they believe that the blend is new and interesting, as they should. Interesting to see the other areas that are less, and things that we can work on going forward. One of the most important things we look at, because it affects our messaging and our media decisions, is why do people purchase and consume or intend to purchase and consume the blend? And we give them 15 different reasons why, 15 different benefits from consuming the blend. And we ask them to rank their top 5. And we do that to force a trade-off with the consumer and the respondent. So we really get insight into what actually drives the reason why they engage with the blend. And consistently, year over year, we see that health reasons are the #1 reason people buy the blend. And to see #1 here is interesting. To get more vegetables into my diet, a healthier way to consume meat, a good way to acquire nutrients and vitamins, and I'm avoiding bad things for myself, my health, fat and calories. So health reasons are the #1 reason. The second reason I would group together is price, but more importantly, taste and culinary. So it tastes good and it's interesting in terms of cooking. I think that's the next big, most interesting area. And third, and it's always been third, has been sustainability. But something interesting that we're seeing this year, even though sustainability reasons are still the least ranked, they are growing over time. And I think that's because in our society today, issues with sustainability are becoming more prominent, and the blend fits right into that. It plays a really great role in any average household's desire to improve sustainable consumption. We also try and track how things are registering with the population that we're working on as a marketing team. So we put a lot of effort into the blended burger product, and that's where we're seeing the most engagement. We do a lot of blended burger advertisements, information and recipes, and we're seeing more than a third of the population seeing those things. And then we have other things that we track here as well. We did a Bon Appetit blended burger contest, and we got pretty good engagement with the population on that as well. So this is us checking on how the things we're spending money on and putting effort into are connecting with the general population. So let's switch gears now. So that was the first thing I wanted to talk to you about. How's the blend doing in the marketplace? Second thing was, well, how are attitudes with mushrooms in general tracking? So we asked questions about attitudes around mushrooms regarding nutrition, environmental sustainability, flavor, pricing, popularity, and versatility. And we track these things, and we could see which are the strongest assessments that we have, how our assessments increasing or declining over time. It doesn't surprise me that the strongest assessment here is mushrooms are versatile, because we've been saying that for over a decade. So that's well established. But we're also watching things like health and nutrition. We want to see that number go up because we see it playing an important role in trends today. And we ask about things, like we said earlier, sustainability and flavor and things like that. So things that we're looking at and working to improve perceptions of over time. We also ask if people are consuming more or less mushrooms compared to a year ago. So we see here that 29% of shoppers are buying more mushrooms than they were a year ago. 12% are consuming less, and almost 60% are consuming the same. So looking back at 2018, the percent of people that are consuming more has increased over time. And that's one of the goals that we have, or one of the KPIs that we shoot for in our marketing, is to try and have more people consume more mushrooms more often. So this is one of the questions that we use to assess how we're doing there. We also wanted to check if people feel like they're going to be consuming more mushrooms after COVID. So we ask, after things get back to normal, how do you think your consumption of mushrooms will continue? So we have 28% of the population saying they're going to cook more with fresh mushrooms. 69%, great number, saying they're going to cook with the same, and 3% saying they're going to cook with less. 0% saying they won't consume at all, which is down from 8% during COVID. We did this survey in March 2020, a year ago, to get our first readings on this. So we know that during COVID, with increased cooking at home, people are trying and consuming more mushrooms because they're cooking more and they're trying to make their cooking more interesting. This is telling us that there's a good residual effect after COVID in terms of people continuing to consume with mushrooms or even cook more. Another trend that we see developing in the marketplace generally and for mushrooms is the rise of concern and interest in health and wellness and immunity in the population. And we and lots of other people believe that COVID spiked that with people. Health just became so much more important in our lives. So we ask a series of questions about how much people believe mushrooms contribute to health and wellness and nutrition. We ask about how much they believe mushrooms are a low-calorie ingredient, a natural source of vitamin D, dense with nutrients and vitamins, containing antioxidants, and reducing fat and sodium intake. And here are our numbers for this year. And we see, for example, that 37% of people believe that mushrooms are a low-calorie ingredient. We also see, though, that 32% of people believe that mushrooms are a natural source of vitamin D. That's up from 19% in 2018. Also, the belief that mushrooms are dense with nutrients, vitamins, and minerals is up to 32% from 23% in 2018. And mushrooms containing antioxidants up to 31% from 17%. So we could see almost across the board increases in people's belief that mushrooms play a role in health and wellness and nutrition and immunity, all those things packed together. And this is why, if you look at presentations and reports on our marketing strategies going forward into this year and next year, mushrooms' role in health and nutrition is going to play a big part in what we're saying and promoting going forward, because it matters and because we do play a strong role. So this kind of information helps us make that kind of decision. In talking about health and nutrition, we added some new questions this year. We wanted to test how important is vitamin D compared to other claims on things. And we asked people to rank the top 5 things that, if on a package claim, would increase their likelihood to purchase fresh mushrooms. And these are things we've been looking at for years here. And maybe we've added a couple new ones here, but here's like, I don't know, a dozen things that they could choose. We asked them to rank their top 5, with one being the most important or the most impactful. And in this case, a low number is closer to 1, so that means it's ranked highest. So we see in the highest spot is organic, which really doesn't surprise me. For 20 years, it's received significant amounts of advertising and promotional support in the marketplace. But number 2 is 100% vitamin D. So it's the second most powerful claim on a package, if it was on a package, to motivate purchase today. So that's new. When we've looked at this before, vitamin D was lower in this ranking. And number 4 is also a claim that relates to vitamin D. So what we're seeing here is vitamin D's link to immunity in a post-COVID world and to health and wellness in general. So something that we're paying attention to, because this could be a big idea for us going forward. We ask people if they're aware of vitamins that have high vitamin D in them, and 49% of the population is aware of that today, up 26%, up from 26% in 2018, almost double in terms of awareness of vitamin D in mushrooms. We also ask people if they've ever bought mushrooms that were high in vitamin D, and that's almost tripled, up to 44%. I suspect, though, that people are confusing or confounding whether or not the mushrooms that they bought had vitamin D in them, because as we saw earlier, there's a high belief that mushrooms are a natural source of vitamin D. So people may be confusing that, but this is what's in their mind. They're very much aware of vitamin D in mushrooms, and they think that they've bought them. We also asked, in terms of vitamin D, the same questions that we ask of the blend. Do you understand it? How do you evaluate it? Do you believe the claims? Are you interested in it? Do you intend to buy it? And for vitamin D, we see these numbers here in the 30s%. And I put the blend results that I just showed you here just for comparison. So it seems like people understand the blend more than they understand vitamin D in mushrooms, which doesn't surprise me at all. But what is surprising is that their evaluation, belief, interest, and intent to purchase vitamin D in mushrooms is equal to that of the blend. And we've already seen the success of the blend. So this kind of result tells us of the potential success of vitamin D as we go forward. Continuing along with this theme, we ask people to rank the most important nutrients in terms of improved health, nutrition, and immunity. Not for mushrooms, but just for health and nutrition, immunity in general. What are the most important nutrients to you? And again, a lower number means closer to 1. And on this list, vitamin D was number 1. So that was a surprise for us, that it would have topped this list of some pretty well-established nutrients, starting with vitamin C. So maybe statistically, we could say that vitamin D and vitamin C are statistically equal here if we account for random error in the data, sampling error. But still, the fact that vitamin D might be sharing #1 spot with vitamin C is a further indication of the strength of this idea in the marketplace today and the role that it could play in marketing and advertising going forward. For example, on labels, which we'll talk about as our third topic today, right here. So as part of our survey, we did an experiment, a controlled scientific experiment, where we had a control group of people, about 280 people, and then we had 6 other exposure groups, where different groups of 280 people were each shown something different. And what they were shown were mushroom packages with different types of labels on them, and that's them here. We showed them a mushroom package with a short nutrient panel, one with a short nutrient panel and 50% vitamin D, a short panel with 100% vitamin D, a long nutrient panel with all the different minerals and nutrients listed, a long nutrient panel with 100% vitamin D, and a long panel with 100% D and a package burst calling out the D. And what we did was we asked all the people the same questions. They were all in different groups, 7 different groups of people who each only saw one thing, but we asked them all the same questions about their one thing. We asked them, do they evaluate it favorably? You might recognize these from earlier because we use the same types of measures. Do you believe this product would contribute to better nutrition and health and immunity? Are you interested in knowing more about this product? Would you purchase this product if it were available where you shop? These numbers here are the averages on a scale of 1 to 10. So I've put a gray bar on the control one because this is the one with nothing on it. And I'm going to show you that right here, give you a visual on what they would have seen. So imagine during the survey, 280 people are randomly shown this package. This is the control package. It's just a basic label that the agency made for us. So 280 people are shown this and asked to evaluate it. 280 different people are shown this panel and they're asked to evaluate this one using the same questions. So what we do as scientists then is we compare the evaluations of this label to this label and use statistics to decide whether or not there's a statistically valid difference between their assessments. And that's what a controlled experiment is. Control and treatment, just like they use in medical testing and other things. So our results here are evaluation scores on a scale of 1 to 10. And all these things here are all compared to the basic one, the one that was on the left just a second ago. So that basic panel, people gave it an evaluation of 7.1 out of 10 on favorable evaluation, 7.3 on health, 6.7 on level of interest, and 6.8 out of 10 on purchase intent. That's with no special label. The short nutrient panel, that's the one that was on the right, got higher scores. Everything that's crossed out in gray here is not a statistically different score, meaning that it's basically equal to the control here. So big takeaway here, you could see the strength of the short nutrient panel. 7.6 out of 10 compared to 7.1 for the control on evaluation. 7.2 compared to 6.7 on being interested in it, wanting to know more. And 7.4 out of 10 compared to 6.8 in terms of purchase. And these stars indicate how statistically significant or how strong the difference was. So we've clearly found through this test that this label, just by putting a basic nutrient fact on the front label of the product, increases evaluation, interest, and purchase intent for the same mushroom package, for an otherwise identical mushroom package. This is interesting for us because we've been having a big debate inside the Mushroom Council and the marketing team. Should we be pushing the idea of putting a label on things? And we believe we should, based on things we read and papers that we read and other things that we do in terms of marketing. But we decided this year, let's actually check that. that assertion that we make and see if it's scientifically justifiable. And that's exactly what we found here. In fact, it is. Now, having a short nutrient panel with a 50% vitamin D claim also is a significantly stronger package. Having a long nutrient panel with 100% vitamin D is, but only in terms of evaluation. And having all of that with a burst also is, and it only affects interest and not purchase intent. So another interesting thing is that, and this is not common in this is common in marketing, sometimes less is more. And we think that's exactly what we might be seeing here with these mocked up package labels with slightly less information being as strong or stronger than the labels with more information on them. There's other theories in marketing called mere exposure, and sometimes just the exposure of a nutrient-oriented element could trigger evaluations, favorable evaluations of a product. I also think from a behavioral psychology perspective that when someone sees a nutrient panel on a product, like in this case here, it may cue to them things that they've been hearing and reading about how nutritious mushrooms are. And it may cue to them and have them take the product because what they've brought to bear at the decisions point, at the point of sale where the decision is being made, is we're cueing in all the other favorable information about health, nutrition, and immunity. And just the mere presence of this cues that in their mind and causes them to be have a higher evaluation, be more interested, and want to buy it. So takeaway here from the experiment is that some basic labeling could have as much as you could call this a 10% increase in purchase intent with shoppers. So we've done other experiments like this as well with other topics, and that just gives you some insight into some of the work that we do on the council and some of the rigor and care that we take in terms of measuring things and supporting our decisions and things that we plan to work on going into the future. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and this is a good time for us to check in and see if we've got some questions, see if we can clarify some things or give some more feedback. So back to you, Christy.
Oh, for some reason my video isn't coming back on, but that's okay. You can still hear me, right, Mark?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we have some comments and a couple of questions. So please continue to add those into the Q&A feature or the chat. They both work just fine. One comment was regarding marketing the blended burgers. Another good thing about marketing the blended burgers is that burgers are a #1 food. They're a #1 sandwich, not just for marketing the blend, but just in general. They're ubiquitous on restaurant menus and in home cooks' regular cooking repertoire. So that was another positive comment there. We had a question about, with regard to the nutrition panel, is it similar to someone wearing a uniform to work? Meaning that if someone wears a uniform, like a pilot or a plumber or a fireman, does that come across as being more valid or legitimate than someone who doesn't?
It's a great analogy because these types of things, they cue subliminal knowledge that brings to bear on the assessment of people or things or products. So it's a nice way to call the nutritional label a cue to health and nutrition. It's like reminding you of the things that you already know. So if I see a pilot in uniform, it reminds me of his expertise. I knew he was an expert, but when I see that, it reinforces it for me, and it may make me feel safe or more confident as a passenger. So it's a great analogy.
A question about the fact that the health benefits of mushrooms ranked so high. Are there anything else that we can do regarding the culinary benefits and flavor of mushrooms, even though that may have ranked lower than the health benefits in terms of consumer interest?
So that's funny to hear that question, because that's the exact question we asked ourselves in our marketing meeting, I think a week ago. If health and wellness is resonating so high, like that says keep doing what we're doing, but if culinary and flavor are still important, are we doing enough? And what are we doing to build that concept? And as we discussed it as a team, we talked about there being 3 pillars of marketing mushrooms going forward. One has to be health, wellness, and nutrition, which we're doing really well on. But we also have to build culinary and flavor as a pillar. And now I think we can start talking more about sustainability as a pillar and work with those things together. And this becomes part of the creative process of marketing, is to ask ourselves in the agency, so what do we do to increase culinary and flavor cred and interest? What do we say where, and who do we work with to build that up, like we've done with health and wellness? And I think if we can keep building all 3 pillars as we go forward, we'll keep building the strength of mushrooms as a product with average consumers. I will come back and say, though, that the blend does all 3 of those. And that's why we talk about the blend. The blend is a very tasty and cool culinary thing that's also more healthy and more sustainable. So it's like a trifecta on those things. And everything we say about the blend, we're really saying about fresh mushrooms. So the blend is just a button that we can speak to that highlights these things about fresh mushrooms. So we share that question, and it's something we're talking about right now in 2022. How do we ramp up the culinary and flavor cred of mushrooms?
Thanks, Mark. That's great. I've seen a couple other comments and questions come through talking about, the blend and how it affects mushroom sales. And I think that that's such a, you just hit the nail on the head. That's such a good point that, the blend calls for mushrooms. It's a culinary application that calls for mushrooms. And it's sort of our, a lot of people look at avocados and think, oh gosh, avocado toast, everyone's eating avocado toast. Well, we have our avocado toast. It's the blend, it is the thing that people could think of, like, oh, what else can I do with these mushrooms that I'm buying as a staple ingredient? So there's another question here about that they're seeing signs of stronger purchase intent post-COVID. Is this across all the participants, or is there variability in the data?
Great question. Well, the results that I just showed you were across all participants, but the questioner is very right that it will vary by type of person. It's not going to be a uniform number across everybody. So when we field a survey like this, we prepare a report like I've shared, and we give talks like this, but it becomes a database that we do future and further analysis on. And one of the things that BARD has really been pressing us to do more analysis on is segmentation. And that's the question that's being asked right here is, can we look at segments and how they're different? Can we go inside the data set and find out who thinks that more or less than others, and how does that relate to consumption? So that's analysis that we're probably doing this summer, is trying to break these general numbers into pieces and look at how are people different by demographics, by health attitudes, by how they shop, heavy and light users. There's lots of things we can look at with the database going forward.
Thanks, Mark. And we have one more comment that came through. Someone saying that with their meetings with retailers, they're hearing that sustainability and nutritional values seem to be really of interest to them from a corporate procurement focus.
Yeah, we're seeing that too. Retailers do things sometimes because their shoppers want it, and they're very good at responding to that. But retailers and buyers and merchandisers, they also are tasked to support corporate goals. And sustainability is coming down as a corporate mission point or a corporate goal. And executives inside retailers are asking individual buyers and merchandisers, what are you doing to support sustainability? What are you doing in your area that links to our overall mission goals in this area? So now these purchasers and merchandisers are talking about this more because it may even be an area that they're being evaluated on. So not only is it something that shoppers are becoming more interested in, it's something they're receiving pressure on from the executive of their company. So it makes perfect sense that you're hearing this more from the people you meet with, because it's being put on their radar screen. And luckily, mushrooms are one of the most sustainable products in the store. And we have a lot of information on the website and through the work that we have that can demonstrate that. And so I don't want to say we're lucky, but we're fortunate that as this issue grows, we're rock solid in that area.
Mushrooms are the answer, Mark. Well, thank you so much to all of our participants for joining today. Many thanks to you, Dr. Lang, for coming and sharing these fascinating insights. We will follow up by email with the slides that Dr. Lang shared today and the recording of today's presentation. And then you'll also be able to access this webinar as well as past webinars on our website 24/7 at mushroomcouncil.org. Watch your inbox for details regarding upcoming webinars. And thanks again for joining us today. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.